I just want to say thank you again, John, for going on this call with me.
You bet.
I saw that you worked for the Associated Press for 16 years. What were some of your favorite parts about working there?
So a lot of cool memories and cool things about working there. One is, one of the most important things that the AP does and really prides itself on is covering the Olympics. And so they put a lot of time and energy and resources into covering those games every 2 years that they roll around. And so I was able to go to the Olympics in London, in Sochi, Russia, and in Rio during my time there. So it was really a super cool, chance to see the world and go cover sports that I'd never covered before, and really kind of expand my horizons and do things like that. So really like the variety of things that we got to do there. One day you could be covering football, the next day you could be covering baseball, the next day you could be covering something totally different. And so it was really just a great place to be, to really kind of work on your skills and covering all sorts of different things and learn how to be flexible and
Mhm.
and do things like that. So a lot of fun doing that stuff, but definitely the Olympics are probably the things that stand out the most for sure.
Yeah, my school actually, we have to write in the Associated Press the same style as them.
Oh
So we've
yeah.
been reading some of them recently, that first
Yep.
semester.
Yeah, it's the big thing, like AP style. So I was I had to do that while I was in college too. So I was nice and ready for it when I joined coming out of college. And yeah, it's a great kind of just way nuts and bolts to get the basics down and kind of get you going in the right direction.
Mhm. Was there any buddy specific that helped you become a better writer?
I mean, there were so many um editors and people that I worked with over the years, but really I think the way that I learned how to become a better writer and kind of develop my own voice was just how much I read other writers that I really respected. So um whether it was kind of someone from the local news, the Star Tribune in Minneapolis here, and like a Chip Scoggins is a good friend of mine, and he's a columnist and at the Star Tribune, and so I would read kind of what he would write about some of the same things that we would be covering, and then I would kind of see where we were different and where we were the same, and why he made certain choices, and then you looked at kind of nationally around. Wright Thompson is a guy who writes for ESPN, and I think he's probably the best sports writer in the country, and so I would read everything that he wrote and just try and you know kind of get different ideas, take little approaches from a multitude of different writers, and then like kind of take the little bits and pieces from all of my favorite guys, and then really try and incorporate them into my own style. And so it's kind of like really just reading as much as I could, and then kind of juxtaposing what they were writing against what I was writing, and then trying to find kind of a happy medium between the two, and that's what helped me the most.
That's pretty cool. When did you realize you wanted to become a writer?
When I was really really young, I kind of grew up really liking sports and writing. Those were my two favorite things, and so I can remember back like into like fifth grade when we had these little fake newspapers that we wrote for in school and stuff like that, and how much I enjoyed just writing stories, and especially writing stories about sports. So really going that far back, but then up through high school and working for the school newspaper in high school, and then going to college and doing it all there. It was, for me, like I was just kind of lucky that very early on I just like, okay, this is what I want to do, let me figure out how to do it. And I never really had any kind of thoughts of doing anything else. I didn't explore any other things. Like, it was kind of tunnel vision on becoming a journalist, and so just kind of set my sights on that and try to make it happen.
In 2017, I saw you join the Athletic. How was that transition from Associated Press to the Athletic? How was that?
Yeah, so it was kind of exciting and different. the AP is like one of the oldest news organizations in the world. This very huge company, um, a lot of tradition and a lot of kind of just longevity that, especially in this day and age um, when the media companies are so volatile and it can be really hard to get into the business, and then not only to get a job but to keep a job. The AP was always so stable, and so I really appreciated that opportunity, and then just a big audience to write for, um and do those things. But then when the Athletic came along, I'd been doing the AP work for really about 16 years, and so I'd done and accomplished a lot with the AP. And it felt like there was, time for maybe to explore something different and just see if there was a different way of doing things. And so the Athletic offered kind of more of an opportunity to expand my horizons a little bit as a writer. With the AP, we were kind of in more of a box where you had to kind of keep your stories pretty short. They were very kind of formulaic in a lot of ways, and for good reason. They had to serve a large audience and kind of appeal to the widest possible spectrum. But the Athletic offered an opportunity to really kind of write longer stories, write more in depth, more detail, and really kind of just push myself and get more into the art of writing, as opposed to the science of it. And so I just felt like, this was a really good opportunity to try something different. And so, it was a long process to think about making that jump and figuring things out, and making the decision. And I really did, kind of labor over it for a long time. But once I made the decision and once I got into it, I just have really, enjoyed the opportunity to spread my wings a little bit and to kind of take my writing and my reporting up another level. And so that's what they promised, and that's what they've delivered so far. And so it's been just a great experience.
That's great to hear. What has been your favorite moment as a writer?
Oh, I don't know. It's kind of I'm getting old now, and I've done a lot of things. I mean, I really enjoyed. I went with AP. I went to New Orleans to cover the Vikings and the Saints when they played in the NFC Championship game in 2009, and it was just an epic, unbelievable game. And so that's one of them. Yeah, the Favre game. Yep. So that was one of my most memorable, just single game experiences. Probably one of my favorites that way. And then for the Athletic, writing kind of the stories about Jimmy Butler and him, kind of requesting his trade from the Timberwolves, and kind of all of the twists and turns that saga took. It's probably been my favorite kind of overall experience in terms of just like reporting it, writing it, covering how crazy, the twists and turns were, and kind of going through all of that drama. Like that was, that's definitely stands out since I've joined the Athletic in the last 3 years.
What's been your favorite player interaction?
Well, my favorite player to work with and deal with is Ricky Rubio from the Wolves. We just, kind of have known each other for a while now. This is my 7th year of covering him, and just he's a really, really good dude. He understands the role of media, and he respects our job, and it takes his time to offer his insights in a very informative way and entertaining way, and has really kind of opened up to some vulnerable sides of him, sharing stories about losing his mother to cancer and a few other things. And so I just think that the relationship that sort of has evolved over the years, and the kind of the stories that we've worked on together, have really been pretty fulfilling. And being able to kind of educate the fan about not just what kind of a player he is, but what kind of a person he is and what he's gone through in his life. That's definitely been my number one guy for sure.
Yeah, he was pretty high prospect when he got drafted, 5th, 09, I want to say.
Yep, that's right. Yep, exactly.
Have you seen him grow a lot throughout those years? Is what he joined in 2011, right? He was
Yeah,
a year or
yep.
two.
That's right. Yep. He came over in 2011 and yeah, he's really kind of, when he came over, he was sort of this kid, this 19, 20-year-old kid and with kind of a baby face and floppy hair and just really kind of just excited to be in the NBA and a fun-loving guy. And then, as his career has gone on, now he is a full-grown adult. He's a father, he's married, he's a husband, and he's become a real veteran in this league and a real leader. And so he's really kind of matured and grown up over the years. And he's changed as a player as well, gotten, not quite as flashy as he was when he first came over, but definitely more technically sound and more disciplined. And so it's been really kind of fun to watch how he's evolved over time, both as a person and as a player.
Mm-hmm. Has there been any players that caught you by surprise that became a star in the league, or any players that didn't end up being anything amazing?
I read about the Vikings as well, and I mean Adam Thielen, really kind of coming from this Division II school in Minnesota, Minnesota Mankato, and just getting a tryout with the Vikings, and then eventually parlaying that into a career as one of the best receivers in the NFL. That's definitely one of the more kind of unlikely, unexpected types of uh, career arcs, I guess, kind of coming up from nowhere and really establishing himself as not just a really good player, but one of the best players in the league. So, definitely something that no one really expected, this kind of skinny, undersized white kid from small town Minnesota to come in and really start blowing these, defensive backs away, on the football field. But that's what's done. And so that's definitely been one that caught me by surprise in a good way for sure.
Mm-hmm. Is there any specific Minnesota Viking or Timberwolves season that you just fell in love with? You could say it was your favorite season?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I've covered both of the teams since like 2001 and really full time since 2005. And so, I missed, I didn't cover the season that Kevin Garnett went to the Western Conference Finals in 04 for the Wolves. So it's been mostly down years for the Wolves. But I do think, from a Viking standpoint, the 2009 season with the Vikings, when Favre came in the first year and had an unbelievable season, and they go to the NFC Championship game. That's definitely probably been the most fun to document, just because no one thought that Favre had that much left in him, and that team was just really, really, really good, and just shot themselves in the foot or they should have been in the Super Bowl. But their Minnesota sports have been largely unsuccessful here for the most of the time I've been here. But that was one where it's like, okay, this team has a shot to win it all, and it didn't work out, but it was still a lot of fun to cover.
What was it like watching the Minneapolis Miracle with Stephon Diggs?
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, like that one was cool because, for so long, the Vikings have been a team that have always let their fans down in big moments, that have had those kinds of plays happen against them in the playoffs. And so to see it actually happen, for in the Vikings' favor, like that was, no one could believe it. Like it was like everyone had given up. Like I remember I tweeted out right before that drive started. I just tweeted out like, "Well, Vikings fans, do you believe in miracles?" And everyone was like, "No, this is over. I hate this." We have had our heart broken again. And then then that happens, and it was just shock and disbelief and craziness. So that's definitely like the single most incredible one moment that I've covered for sure. I mean, that one, it came out of nowhere, and it was And it was just wild as heck, and no one saw that one coming.
Yeah, I never forget Case Keenum celebrating when
Yeah.
they go for two, and they nailed it for the 2-point conversion or something like that.
Well, it was a walk-off touchdown, so they
Yeah.
were all done. But yeah, it was, yeah, no, it was just wild. And then, to go into the locker room afterward and just see, there were players crying.
Mhm.
It was just super emotional. It was just total bedlam. No one, it was chaos everywhere in the best possible way.
What do you think the future of those two teams, Timberwolves and Vikings? Do you think it's looking bright?
It's hard to say. I think the NFL, the Vikings were 7-9 this year. They weren't
Mhm.
they weren't great, but they had a lot of injuries and things. And so in the NFL, like, you can turn things around pretty quickly if you get the right draft pick, sign the right free agent, and you can kind of get rolling the right way. And so I think they have a chance. They're always pretty good. It's,
Mhm.
they've never been there. There's rarely been times where they're really great teams, but they've been pretty darn good for most of the 2000s. So I think they have a chance to jump back in and be competitive. The Wolves have just, they've really struggled for a long, long time, and I think that if Towns is healthy,
Mhm.
they can be a playoff team. But they're awfully thin behind him. So if they got a lot of work to do before they have a roster that's ready to compete in the West. I like Anthony Edwards a lot. I think that he's got a lot of promise, but he's 19 years old. He's going to take a little
Yeah.
time to kind of grow into things and figure things out. But if they can keep Towns healthy and keep him in, they'll at least have a chance to be in the playoff conversation. But it's hard to see how they put things together where they're actually not just trying to get into the playoffs, but maybe trying to win series in the playoffs.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that Timberwolves team. I think Malik Beasley, I'm hoping he's gonna start
Yeah.
stepping up, fixes his off-court problems, and
Yep.
I like
Yeah. No.
Nashville
Yeah.
too. Nashville
Yeah,
is
yeah,
up.
they have some good players. I mean, some part of it is that they're just so young.
Yeah.
Like most of these guys are 23, 22, 24 years old, and so they just need to grow up a little bit. But
Mhm.
if they can keep the group together, and maybe in 2 years where they're all kind of reaching, maybe Towns is 27 and Beasley's 26, and they could maybe make a move here.
Mhm. I saw you also have a podcast about Timberwolves. How has that been?
It's been cool, man. Yeah, it's something different than writing. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that it's always good for us in this business to be able to kind of do different things. And so I do the podcast, and just kind of basically give Wolves fans a little bit of an idea of my written content, but just in spoken word. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's a little easier to digest, and some people like that in that format. I also find that when I'm doing the podcast, and it kind of helps me talk through some of the ideas I have to write about. And, as I'm having conversations with my co-host about the Wolves and what's going on and what's working and what's not, a lot of times I'll kind of come away with that with good ideas to explore for my articles. And so that's been really helpful that way as well. So I enjoy it. I do that. I do a guest spot on a weekly radio show, and um, do a little TV here and there. And so it's just, when you can kind of do the different formats, it just kind of, I think it just helps you to diversify and look at things in different ways. And it can kind of add to your all around game.
What has it been like talking to the players after the game on Zoom this year? Definitely a difference.
Yeah, it's different. It's not, it's not great. I mean, we're used to being in the locker rooms and being able to have kind of more organic conversations, and really, when you're in the locker room, you can also kind of get a good feel for the mood, and what players are upset, what players are okay, and what's on these guys' minds. And with these Zoom meetings, you get on and it's really more formal. It's,
Mhm.
you have your questions and your answers, and that's it. And usually every conversation is over in 4 or 5 minutes. Whereas when we were able to go into the locker rooms, I could kind of hang back and just have a casual conversation with a player, And, maybe it's not even necessarily for an interview that I'm doing for a story, but it's just kind of trying to build a connection, because the big thing that you have to do as a reporter is build relationships with the people that you cover, so they trust you and they can, feel confident in kind of speaking their mind and opening up to you and doing those things. And it really is difficult to do that when you're just kind of on a screen like this and just rat-a-tat-tat, Q&A, 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 and then that's it.
You were saying. Well, we saw in the MLB playoffs, we saw a report ask Walker Buehler and Dodgers why his pants were so tight. Have you ever seen a question like that before? Something ridiculous?
Yeah, there's kind of, I can't remember any off the top of my head, but yeah, I would say, at least 5 or 6 times a year in a press conference or in a Zoom or something, there's, someone asks a question and you're just like, your eyebrows raised and you're just like, what is going on here? And so that's part of it, especially at the bigger events. We cover Super Bowl and the Super Bowl media days and things like that. There's so many journalists from all over the world, and a lot of them aren't journalists. They're just kind of playing the part for a weekend, and they ask all these goofy, crazy questions and trying to get reactions out of players and stuff like that. And it is what it is. You just got to kind of not take it too seriously and shake your head and wait your turn.
What has been one of your favorite interviewing questions have you done with a player? Is any specific show?
I basically what I always try to ask something with players of just like, how did this happen? How is this going on? Because I want them to expand beyond just, kind of the cliched short answers. And I want to try and draw some real insight into what's going through their head and what they're feeling, why something happened or how they saw it unfold in front of them. And I find that when you ask a question with, kind of how at the front, I think it gets them thinking in a different way, and it makes it harder for a player to just say, well, that's just the way it is, or or kind of sidestep out of it. Their players are always, sometimes players are just not going to want to talk. And so they might not give you something, but when I try to probe that way and just, it lets them know that I'm interested in what they're thinking about and how they're seeing things. And I'm trying to get, kind of to look at things through their eyes. And that's when I found the most kind of, educational, informative answers that come from those questions. And that's because that's what you're trying to get to, is you're trying to get beyond the fluffy, kind of cliched, regular answers, and get to actually the heart of what's happening to explain it to the reader. And I've always found more success going about it that way than just, what happened here kind of stuff.
Is there any specific piece that you're like, wow, this is one of my best work I've ever done?
I'm not. Let's see. Well, it's hard. Like, I don't really kind of hold a lot of stories sort of, in my mind after they're done. Like, I quickly try to move on to the next thing and just do it again. But there was one a couple of years ago that I wrote about Ricky Rubio and Ryan Saunders, and how they kind of really formed a tight bond because they both lost a parent to cancer, in the same year. And both of them really were kind enough to sit down and really talk through their emotions and how they built a connection. And I do think, I think that really kind of opened up a different world for Wolves fans to get to know these guys a little bit more. I wrote another piece last March about D'Angelo Russell and just kind of a profile on him and what he's gone through and kind of the vagabond nature of his NBA existence to this point. And he was very kind of forthcoming in just talking about all of the struggles that he's had and how he was hoping that he could find a home in Minnesota. And that was, really well received as well. I mean, anytime that I can get a player or a coach or an executive or somebody to really kind of sit down and open up beyond the surface level stuff that they normally give to reporters, like those are the times where I just walk away feeling really satisfied and just like, okay, when someone reads this story, they're going to learn something that they would not have otherwise known. And that's kind of my favorite kinds of pieces.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever had a moment, might not even be a player, you just been completely starstruck when you see them, maybe in the arena?
When I was young, for sure, like the first few times I walked into a locker room, I remember, when I was still in college, kind of doing some side work um, and walked into the Vikings locker room in 1999 and saw Randy Moss. And that was like, whew, okay. Like this guy's a big star. And I'm just, I'm 20 years old and still, and don't know, what to ask. I don't know how this all works. And so that was one. Michael Jordan one time I saw him at a golf tournament. That was a big one of just like, man, this guy has a lot of just charisma and star power. And you're just like, okay, this guy moves in a different way than the rest of us. And so those are probably two, that just stick out in my mind right away. I will say, like, one, now I've been doing it for so long. Now you're just kind of used to being around these ultra famous people, and it gets, when LeBron is right by you, you're just like, okay, there's LeBron. Like that's not that's not as big of a deal anymore. But certainly early on in the career, when you're just getting exposed to these guys for the first time, and you're just kind of trying to get up the courage to go out on that limb and ask a question, like that can be pretty intimidating and pretty awe-inspiring.
Do you have any big recommendations for young writers like me?
You know what? I just always tell people, whatever you can do to get real world experience writing, that's the most important thing. When you look to apply for jobs, any editor who is considering your resume is not really going to care much about your grade point average or what you majored in college or things like that. Like they want to see real life examples of writing that you've done that's been edited by someone else, and that has shown that you've kind of gone through a little bit of the process of reporting a story and then of putting it on paper, on screen. So if there are local newspapers around your place, if there's a college newspaper that you can write for, or website, whatever, if there's like, there's all sorts of these there's these blogs and alternative websites, just anything that you can do to write anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be sports. It can be a music column. It could be, anything, movies, whatever it is. Like you have to write as much as you possibly can, because writing it's a muscle, like in your brain, and you have to exercise it. And the first few times that you do it, it's going to be out of shape and it's not going to look pretty. But the more often that you do it, the more confident that you become in it, the more in shape that muscle becomes, and then the tighter and more and cleaner your stories are. And that's what really appeals to people and gives them, gives people an idea of like, okay, this young man knows what he's doing. Like he's, he still has plenty to work on, but there's a base level of talent and of work ethic there that we'll take a chance on bringing him in and helping him develop. And so I think that just pursue anything you can, even if it's just writing for your own personal blog or whatever, whatever it is. Just make sure that you're really, exercising that muscle, hundreds of times a year, and try and, that's the way that you develop your voice. That's the way you kind of, really kind of start to clean up what, all the mistakes that young writers make. and get feedback on it from, from professors, from editors at publications, to, kind of help you really refine what you're doing. And if you can do that, and you can get like a good stack of writing samples that you can send along with a cover letter to places that have openings, that's the key right there.
Well, I want to say thank you. You answered all my questions tremendously. Is anything else you want to add?
Not really. I always say with young writers who are getting into it and trying to get into it right now, it's a very, very hard field to break into. I mean, much harder than when I started in 2001. So you have to kind of be prepared that that it's going to take a little time. That you're going to have to kind of probably there's chances that you'll have to do freelance writing and on the side while you do another job to pay the bills until something really breaks through. But if you really love it and you really want to do it, and you do break through and into kind of like a more of a regular writing role where you can make a living for yourself, it's the best job in the world. Like there's nothing better than it. So it's, kind of prepare yourself for some hard times as you're starting to get yourself established and acclimated to it, but also understand that, the struggle is worth it if you're willing to put in the time and the effort and kind of go through the initial difficulties with it. And if you can get to the other side of the rainbow, it's a pretty great life. So hopefully things work out for you.
Yeah, so I'm hoping. So far, my first interview I've done that I rarely got into it. I somehow got an interview with Tony Davis, which was really fun. I got one.
Great.
Local Boston, right? And then I got Bobby Marks too to get on the call. And
Excellent.
yeah, no, I appreciate it very much.
Oh, no problem, Keith. Yeah, best of luck to you, man. Keep in touch and let me know how it goes. So
Thank you. Have a great day.
all right, you too.